Hi, it's me, Sam B. Here at Full Frontal, we can't believe how many pieces about gun violence we need to make, but unfortunately, it's always topical in the U.S. So my staff has compiled some of our most in-depth pieces on the subject. Never easy to talk about, always important. Please don't make us make any more of them. It's been 3 days since the mass shootings in Texas and Ohio, and people are very tense. Our nation's butthole is clenched so tight it could hoist a bowling ball. Last night in Times Square, a motorcycle backfired and the crowd stampeded thinking there was a gunman loose. Gentle request to the automobile industry, could you please make vehicles that don't make gun sounds? Any other sound would be fine. Make it so backfiring cars sound like DJ Khaled.
DJ Khaled, another one.
See, that's not scary, and now you know that car doesn't go down on his car wife. And if that's not practical, here's a better idea. Get rid of the guns. People should not have to stampede through Times Square for anything but free samples at the M&M store. We are so sick of living in fear for no goddamn good reason. It is aging us. When this show premiered 3.5 years ago, I looked like this. Oh my God. Can you believe that outfit I'm wearing? What was I thinking? It's very clear what the problem is, despite the usual attempts by the president and others to pin the blame elsewhere like this.
We must reform our mental health laws to better identify mentally disturbed individuals. Mental illness and hatred pulls the trigger, not the gun.
Right, the gun didn't pull the trigger because that is physically impossible unless maybe it had one of its ribs removed. But the gun did put the bullets into people. Mental illness did not. As far as we know, the El Paso shooter wasn't mentally ill at all. Being a racist monster isn't a mental illness. In fact, you can be one and be a very stable genius. Painting mass shooters as mentally ill is unfair to the vast majority of mentally ill people who aren't stocking up on killing machines. It's a lazy assumption. It would be like if I assumed that you were all feeble-minded scrotes who could only manage an erection while stroking a gun. Stop trying to make this problem more complex than it is. We know what causes mass shootings, and you do too. It's the guns, stupid. You know, those weird metal thingies that have controlled every decision you've made your entire political career? But Trump found another scapegoat in his speech, citing people who immerse themselves in a violent fantasy world where they're constantly being attacked by enemies. No, not that violent fantasy world, this one.
We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace.
Video games are not to blame for shootings or assaults or hate crimes. They are not that influential. My college boyfriend played Mortal Kombat all the time and he never learned how to finish me. Even the Supreme Court has called bullshit on the link between video games and violence, but the entertainment industry has always been an easy target for politicians trying to blame someone for violence. In the 90s, it was action movies. In the 80s, it was heavy metal. In the 50s, it was comic books. And obviously, the Civil War would never have happened if it wasn't for those violent chess sets. For those who still somehow don't get the link between guns and gun violence, a review by the Harvard School of Public Health found that, surprise, where there are more guns, there is more homicide. That research was the biggest waste of Harvard-educated minds since the writer's room at 2.5 Men. It's so painfully, stupidly obvious that guns cause gun violence, yet Republicans keep trying to find any other cause, no matter how nonsensical.
Representative Candace Keller from Middletown posted this now deleted message on Facebook blaming the recent shootings on gay marriage, drag queen advocates, and recreational marijuana. She also appeared to point blame at former President Barack Obama and football player Colin Kaepernick.
Those don't cause mass shootings, although they would cause a hell of a party. Best bar mitzvah ever. Our political leaders are like those idiot Wheel of Fortune contestants who have most of the puzzle revealed but still keep guessing the wrong answer. It's guns, you heads. Just say guns. Trump's speech did make a few worthless nods toward curbing gun violence. He endorsed red flag laws, which would allow the confiscation of guns from people deemed to pose a threat. But those are state laws. The proposed federal legislation would only provide grants to states that choose to enact them. Trump also offered to expand background checks if Democrats would agree to tighten immigration laws, a compromise that gives everyone a win, including the El Paso shooter who called for tighter immigration laws in his manifesto. This was one of the deadliest hate crimes against Hispanic people in our country's history. Using it to give our xenophobic president a win would be a slap in the face. It would be like if we passed reparations for slavery but only paid them to Mel Gibson. And background checks aren't even a concession to the Democrats anyway. 92% of Republicans want them. Almost everyone supports them, except Mitch McConnell, who's refusing to let the Senate vote on a bipartisan background checks bill that was passed by the House. Unfortunately, the only way around Mitch is to win back the Senate. Either that or stick a bunch of patios on it. Republicans can't even consider gun legislation because they're afraid the NRA will attack them, which is a really horrible reason to let innocent people die. They are endangering all of America to appease a group that has fewer than 5 million members, which sounds like a lot, but that's only 1.5% of the U.S. population, keeping us from having sane gun laws. By comparison, 12 million Americans own Kenny G's Breathless album, and we don't let those assholes tell the rest of us what to do. Trump and the Republicans have laid out a clear solution to end gun violence. First, cure the mental illness they invented, then get rid of video games, the internet, plus transgender people, same-sex marriage, drag queens, marijuana, kneeling athletes, and Barack Obama. And while we're at it, all embrace Jesus Christ as our savior. It's just that simple. Well, how about this? Get rid of the guns. If not, come November 2020, we'll just get rid of you. There was another horrific mass shooting yesterday. We've come to expect that in the wake of those hellish events, the NRA actually grows stronger. But for once, that might not be true.
A power struggle between the NRA's top leaders.
There's some real drama playing out with the NRA convention. Oliver North has been asked to step down.
Wayne LaPierre went public saying that Oliver North was threatening to take the NRA's board a bunch of accusations against him.
Ooh, are you there, Marie Kondo? Because we got ourselves a mess on aisle. Pew, 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 pew. The NRA's power struggle is between these two gun baby crypt keepers. The bad man on the left is Wayne LaPierre, who has served as the NRA CEO since 1991. You might remember LaPierre from that time he responded to the Sandy Hook shooting like this.
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. I call on Congress today to act immediately to appropriate whatever is necessary to put armed police officers in every single school in this nation.
Time to dust off the trusty graphics package we've had since 1991. F you, Wayne LaPierre. That sentiment still stands. The piece of shit on the right is recently ousted NRA President Oliver North, best known for his role in the Iran-Contra affair, in which he helped America sell weapons to bad people so we could give money to other bad people. So basically, NRA material. LaPierre and North have been locked in a battle in which LaPierre accused North of attempting to blackmail him into resigning. LaPierre also claims North threatened to release damaging information on LaPierre and the NRA, including allegations against a staff member of sexual harassment and evidence that LaPierre spent nearly $500,000 on clothes and travel. How does Wayne LaPierre have an exorbitant wardrobe budget? Did he take all his guns into a men's warehouse and demand they sell him 300 of the same suit? The slap fight between LaPierre and North was itself all a part of a bigger conflict between the NRA and their longtime PR and ad agency, Ackerman McQueen, or as they affectionately call it, ACMAC, which sounds more like a character from Oklahoma who dies of dysentery. ACMAC has been working for the NRA since the 80s and is responsible for most of their public image, from Charlton Heston's For My Cold Dead Hands to NRA TV, which is a very normal online network. It delivers 24 hours a day of not just gun porn, but also every right-wing smear, conspiracy, and lie.
Not all Muslims are radicalized, but all radicalized terrorists are Muslims.
It's an invasion under the guise of migration.
I believe she could have been talked into remembering something she may not have. It's not mass shootings or killing children in overwhelming numbers. It's black on black crime.
To all the kids from Parkland getting ready to use your First Amendment to attack everyone else's Second Amendment, I wish a hero like Blaine had been at Marjorie Douglas High School last month, because your classmates would still be alive and no one would know your names.
I've looked at Thomas and Friends, at their pictures, and I see gray and blue, and I'm really, really struggling to understand how in the world there isn't any diversity in any of this. Oh, was it because, I see it, it was the white hoods.
So there's also comedy. You know, putting a KKK hood on Thomas the Tank Engine doesn't make him more scary. He's already terrifying. The bizarre and disturbing contents of NRA TV actually aren't inconsequential. Some members of the NRA have been worried for a while that NRA TV distracted audiences from focusing on gun ownership, leading those members to push for the new NRA slogan, "Hey, we're shooting people weird, not KKK Thomas the Tank Engine weird." Ackerman McQueen is also the brain behind Carry Guard, which is essentially NRA's insurance if you murder someone.
A bad guy walked in and opened fire. While others were panicked, one man was legally armed and well-trained. The police know it's a lawful shooting, but there'll still be a long night of interrogations. And the story will be on the news before he's home, which means lots of lawyers will contact the dead thug's family. This is why the NRA created NRA Carry Guard, the most comprehensive training, legal protection, and financial coverage available to those who carry.
Oh my God, you guys, Dana Lash did something real bad in that 7-Eleven. Buy her insurance or she'll do it again. Carry Guard has also been the subject of various legal battles, which is too bad for the NRA since it was intended to secure their long-term prosperity. That's why I'd like to introduce them to my product, NRA Carry Guard, which protects you when your own ad agency f***s you out of your pro-gun money. And for this steady stream of racism and grift, the NRA pays Ackerman McQueen more than $40 million a year. Actually, the NRA doesn't currently know what they're paying Ackerman McQueen $40 million a year for. They're suing to find out, and ACMAC won't tell them. But we do know some of what they're spending the money on. They paid LaPierre's rival Oliver North $1 million to host 12 episodes of his own web series, and then they only made 4, which is crazy because I thought Ollie and cars selling guns for Contras was really gonna catch on. ACMAC has bled the NRA dry. An analysis of NRA finances showed that over the last 11 years, they were in the red for 7. The NRA is now hemorrhaging money so badly, they've had to freeze employee pensions, take away water coolers, and get rid of free coffee in their office, which is outrageous because when coffee is outlawed, only outlaws will have coffee. Another reason NRA employees need to share squares of toilet paper is that the organization spent an unprecedented amount, more than $50 million on the 2016 elections. However, that too seems to have backfired.
The organization reported a total income drop of $55 million back in 2017.
In 2017, their membership dues, Shannon, plunged $35 million, and it lost another $35 million in gifts and contributions. What does that tell you? And couple that with the changing views on common sense gun laws in this country. What does that tell you?
Without a president threatening to take away their guns, members are less motivated to pay up. It's like how my college boyfriend only went down on me when I threatened to dump him, so I threatened to dump him twice a day. Gun owners just no longer feel the need to eat out the NRA, and I know that's a gross, unfair metaphor, and I apologize. We checked with our research department, and they confirmed nobody in the NRA has ever been eaten out. Meanwhile, if you get butterflies thinking about the pro-murder gun lobby going bankrupt, here's something that'll really get you going.
Senate Democrats are now looking into alleged shady financial dealings of the NRA, which could threaten the gun rights group tax exempt status.
So let's just quickly talk about the New York Attorney General's investigation into their tax-exempt status. How existential a threat would that be to its survival?
If it loses its tax-exempt status, then the NRA will really cease to exist.
The NRA could cease to exist? Don't make me cream my jeans on national television. Unfortunately, it's pretty unlikely that the NRA will actually fold. The NRA is a lot like measles. Whenever we think it'll go away and stop killing people, some idiot brings it back. That said, New York State's investigation into the NRA's shitty finances is very bad for them. And unlike the latest mass shooting, it's something they'll actually have to care about. Right now, the party that voted over 50 times to weaken mental health care is suddenly very concerned about mental health care. Not like concerned in the sense of funding it or doing anything about it, but concerned enough to use it as a distraction.
A sicko like this guy, he was a sick guy.
A lunatic kid gone crazy. The poster child for a mentally deranged individual. A deranged madman.
This insane monster, this individual was nuts.
If we keep screaming that he's crazy, everyone will forget that he did this with a gun that no one should ever have in the first place. Now look, we all know how I feel about guns. I hate them and I want to melt them down into jewelry for transgender vegans. And I am all for more funding for mental health, especially for my writers, every last one of whom has seasonal affective disorder. Guys, please get up. I promise I'll introduce you to John Oliver one day. But most mass murderers aren't mentally ill. Only about 22% of them are. That means the other 78% are just hateful assholes. And yes, Nicholas Cruz was mentally ill, but entirely separate from that, he was also a violent bigot. We have no reason to think his mental health was more to blame for what he did.
The gunman wrote things like this: I hate Jews, expletives, immigrants. Shoot them in the back of the head. I think I'm going to kill people.
The Associated Press reports one student says Cruz was abusive to his ex-girlfriend.
The shooter also posted pictures on Instagram, including this one, which shows him wearing a Make America Great Again hat.
Hey, Instagram made me blur my luxurious nipples, and he can put that shit up there? Nicholas Cruz wasn't the only mass shooter to hold racist views. In fact, the Southern Poverty Law Center has developed a profile for what they call alt-right killers. Young white men characterized by their indoctrination into alt-right ideology and their appreciation of Rick and Morty on a level that you couldn't possibly get. So far, the SPLC has identified 13 alt-right killers who have murdered or injured over 100 people. This baker's dozen of nightmares includes Dylan Roof, Elliot Rodger, and Charlottesville killer James Alex Fields. But where are these young, angry white men becoming radicalized? The same place young white women are learning the latest eyebrow trend, fire brows, the internet.
According to several of the organizations that track hate groups, the number of people joining these hate groups is up, as are hate-related incidents. These groups are on Facebook, they're on Twitter, they're on Reddit, they have their own websites. They are trying to get their message out any way they can, and it is working.
These people are basically white ISIS, except more effective. That's right. The only thing that white supremacists are actually better at than brown people is terrorism and wearing shorts with the most pockets. Look, I am not saying that every young man who gets red-pilled is being radicalized. Oh, wait. No, yes, I am, because that is what being red-pilled means.
What does it mean to swallow the red pill?
You pretty much accept this quote-unquote truth. That point of view was that women are having too much power.
To swallow the red pill is to accept that everything you've been told about society, about gender, race, politics, is a lie.
When it comes to online radicalization, red pillers don't always start off wanting to burn down the world. Maybe they're just looking for dating tips.
A search for dating advice can spiral into political radicalization. Was it just that you felt lonely or misunderstood?
Combination of both. That was essentially like my gateway drug into the whole concept that feminism was my enemy.
You can start to embody those more radical ideas
based on the initial idea that men are actually the ones that are being mistreated in society. So once you start from that basis, it's really easy for it to snowball.
Snowball is actually the perfect name for what happens when a bunch of sensitive snowflakes terrified of women find a safe space to get revenge. Many of these communities are of self-labeled incels, short for involuntarily celibate. I mean, sure, okay. I mean, I call myself a big-call-mifa, short for Big Call the Midwife fan, which is really my favorite online community. Believe it or not, incels have a lot to say about women, who they call roasties, which I guess is a slur about how cis women's genitals look like roast beef. Well, joke's on them, because my vagina is actually a fully functioning gelato shop. It's way too cold in there, and everyone tells me the ones in Italy are better. Alt-right mass killers aren't isolated. They grow out of online communities where people idolize Santa Barbara killer Elliot Rodger, film message board after message board with praise for school shootings, and Photoshop Dylan Roof's haircut onto their avatars. To be clear, these are people who don't know why they're celibate. Look, these kinds of online communities are where Nicholas Cruz, Elliot Rodger, and a lot of mass shooters were made. Isn't it fun to imagine a glorious world where we take that threat as seriously as we take Muslim refugees and aggressively peaceful black people? Before an alt-right shooter starts mass shooting, he's just an angry white man who hates women and people of color, and being angry and hateful is not a mental illness. In fact, some days it feels like it's as American as apple pie. These people lost their lives to the alt-right. If we want to prevent more deaths, we have to not just treat mental illness, but fight hate. Therapists can't cure hundreds of years of misogyny and racism, and we shouldn't ask them to. They have their hands full convincing me that not everyone at my birthday party hated me. Maybe they just came because they love cake. Organizations like Life After Hate can help de-radicalize bitter white men and dismantle hate movements. I mean, at least I hope they can, since Trump slashed the hell out of their funding. So you know what? In the meantime, let's just do whatever the fuck Emma and her friends tell us to do. If I've learned anything since moving to America, it's that fried chicken is bread and gun violence happens every day. In the month since the Las Vegas shooting, over 900 more Americans have lost their lives to guns. We haven't heard about most of these because cable news is only on 24 hours a day, so we only take notice on the most shootiest days in the shootiest places. Mass shootings are scary and impossible to predict, except for this one big thing that's a really good predictor.
Everytown for Gun Safety performed an exhaustive study of mass shootings from 2009 through 2016. There were 156 mass shootings. 54% of those incidents were related to domestic or family violence.
Mass shooters come in all male shapes and all male sizes, but most of them rehearse for it the same way.
James Hodgkinson was at the center of a big domestic disturbance. He punched a woman in the face, dragged his daughter to the ground by her hair.
This is Omar Mateen's ex-wife, who told ABC News he regularly beat her.
At least 2 of Robert Louis Deer's ex-wives accused him of physical abuse, and in 1992, he was arrested and accused of sexual violence and rape.
Yep, you got it. The common thread is domestic violence.
There were 10 times as many women killed by a current husband or boyfriend or ex-husband as by a male stranger. The majority of this violence is perpetrated with firearms.
Women are 5 times as likely, more likely to die from domestic violence when there are guns in their household.
An abusive husband and a gun is a deadly combination. It's like matches and gasoline, or men and gasoline, or men and everything else. So tell us more about this crazy theory that violent men don't have much regard for lady folks.
The majority of mass shooters in America also behaved in abusive ways with respect to their spouses or intimate partners or other close family members. They do tend to have these notions of a woman's traditional place. They tend to be rankled by women who speak out, by women who argue with them. These are people who want to exercise control over women.
This study brought to you by The Institute for Men confirming things that women have known since the beginning of fucking time. And by viewers like you. It turns out there's legislation that would help prevent mass shootings and domestic violence, and it's only a little gun control-y.
States that require background checks see 46% fewer women shot by their partners. But there's still a loophole in the system that allows guns to get into the hands of domestic abusers. It's called the boyfriend loophole. Domestic abusers are prohibited from buying or owning a firearm if they've ever been married to the victim, lived together, or had a child. But a dangerous ex-boyfriend or a dating partner, there's nothing stopping them.
Yes, it's the boyfriend loophole, not to be confused with the Sweet Valley High book of the same name. The boyfriend loophole goes back 20 years when Congress made a half-hearted effort to keep guns out of domestic abusers' hands. But there was concern that innocent men's gun rights could be impeded because bitches be lying. So Congress defined domestic violence in a way that focuses on spouses, cohabitating couples, and couples with kids. But they excluded boyfriends who were just keeping it casual. Just what we needed, ladies, another excuse for men not to commit. That joke was brought to you by the Kathy Collection, now available on Kindle. It's excellent. By weaseling out with their "it's complicated" relationship status, Congress left a quarter of all domestic violence victims vulnerable and led to the worst De Beers ad campaign ever. The law also prohibited only the purchase of guns, allowing abusers to keep whatever weapons they already owned. It did nothing to stop them from skipping a background check by going through a private seller, and it didn't prevent them from buying guns if they had a temporary protective order filed against them. But other than that, the law worked out great, right?
Lori Duker heads Court Watch Montgomery. For the last year, she and 10 volunteers tracked more than 100 domestic violence cases in Montgomery County. Together, they found judges overwhelmingly failed to tell convicted abusers that they could no longer own a gun. The judges' failure rate? 99%.
99% failure rate? How can anything have a 99% failure rate? Even burlap condoms only have a 98% failure rate. So what gives, judges? No reasonable person wants abusers to have guns. There are even real Americans, white conservative men, who want to close the boyfriend loophole.
I'm the sheriff in Racine County, Wisconsin. I am a conservative Republican. Any cop will tell you that domestic violence calls are the most dangerous calls that law enforcement officers will respond to. The last thing that the victim needs, and the last thing that my deputies need, is a dangerous abuser armed with illegal weapons.
Ooh, move over, Carl Winslow. Mama's got a new favorite sex fantasy cop. Now, believe it or not, this is one area where advocates for sensible gun control are winning. This year alone, 8 states have passed or strengthened laws to varying degrees to keep guns away from domestic abusers. And in most of those states, the legislation was signed by a Republican governor. Since 2013, similar bills have been signed by Republicans, including Scott Walker, Nikki Haley, and that creepy old Alabama governor who resigned after he got caught boning his advisor. Thanks, Governor Droopy Balls. A grateful nation salutes you. These are a few small rays of light in a story so dark Jeff Sessions won't let it vote. But there's a lot of work left to be done. Existing laws aren't enforced enough, victims are too often met with skepticism, and there are still 37 states that haven't closed the boyfriend loophole. Look, even if you don't give a shit about domestic violence, abused women are the canary in the coal mine for mass shootings. If you take guns from abusers, you might even be able to save more important non-female lives. And the law shouldn't care if the person holding a gun is married, because the gun definitely doesn't. Well, here we are. Now, after a massacre, the standard operating procedure is that you stand on stage and deliver some well-meaning words about how we will get through this together, how love wins, how love conquers hate, and that is great. That is beautiful, but you know what? Fuck it. I am too angry for that. Love does not win unless we start loving each other enough to fix our fucking problems.
There were 370 instances in 2015 where more than 4 people were shot at one given time, more than 1 per day.
Hey, is it okay if instead of making jokes, I just scream for 7 minutes until we go to commercial? No, it's not okay? Okay, here we go. Mass shootings have become so frequent in this country. It seems like the only thing that will stop a bad guy with a gun is another bad guy with a gun who coincidentally came to shoot up the same place. Our mass shooter du jour was Omar Mateen, born in New York. He beat his ex-wife. He'd been reported multiple times to his employer as homophobic and unhinged, and the FBI had twice questioned him for ties to terrorism. But none of these things disqualified him from legally buying a gun that shoots 45 rounds a minute. Not even his terrible mirror selfies. I think we can all agree that if you don't have one friend to hold the phone for you, your lone wolf ass doesn't get a gun. Let this be a lesson, ladies. If someone's Tinder profile is just mirror selfies, they're definitely a murderer. But you know what? Hey, who could have predicted that letting suspected extremists buy guns was a bad idea? Other than Obama less than 2 weeks ago.
I've got people who we know have been on ISIL websites, living here in the United States, U.S. citizens, and we're allowed to put them on the no-fly list when it comes to airlines. But because of the National Rifle Association, I cannot prohibit those people from buying a gun.
Obama may have been explaining that vulnerability in our gun laws at the very moment the Orlando shooter was taking advantage of it. Did the shooter just watch PBS NewsHour and go, hey, that's what I should do? You know what? Of course, this raises some very thorny questions. Should we restrict people's rights based on scary things they say? Are innocent lives worth less than the sanctity of free speech, even if it's hate speech? And what about profiling? You know what? These questions are hard. It's a lot easier to just accept that going to a public place carries a non-zero risk of dying in a hail of bullets.
This could have happened anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, today was Orlando's turn.
Orlando's turn? Mass shootings are so normalized now that we're taking turns. Hey, Minnesota, this is Delaware. It's my turn for a mass shooting tomorrow, but I have family visiting, so can you switch mass shootings with me? Thanks, bye. And as for anywhere in the world, not quite Sparky. Australia had 5 mass shootings between 1987 and 1996. Then the public decided that was no fun. Parliament passed strict gun laws, and they haven't had a mass shooting since then. Let me repeat that. Australia hasn't had a single mass shooting since the Fresh Prince left Bel Air and was never heard from again. Of course, you know, Australia doesn't have a Second Amendment. Love you, Madison. Congratulations on your Tony, but you really fucked us with that one. We can't constitutionally get rid of all guns, but can't we get semi-automatic assault rifles out of the hands of civilians? Sam B wants to take your guns away. Yes! The ones that mow down a room full of people in seconds, yes, I do want to take those guns away. These high-capacity penis substitutes are a shitty choice for hunting and home protection, but perfect for portable mayhem. That's right. What Paul Giamatti is to biopics, the highly profitable AR-15 is to deadly mass shooting. It turns up at gay nightclubs, movie theaters, an elementary school, colleges, even an office party with coworkers. It's nicknamed America's gun, and unlike handguns, it can be bought in Florida with no waiting period. Perhaps the governor would like to comment on that?
Is there anything that you can do on a policy level to stop something like this in the future?
Look, we're dealing with a tragedy right now. Our prayers go out to everybody impacted. Law enforcement's doing their job.
If only shooting victims could dodge bullets as deftly as you dodged that question.
There will be plenty of time to think about how do we make, continue to improve our society.
What the fuck are you even talking about? This wasn't even Orlando's first high-profile gun murder of the weekend. Stop thinking and do something to improve our society.
We're going to continue to work on how we do that. Look, we're a resilient state. Bye-bye.
What? Oh, okay, bye-bye. Later, skater. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Seriously, that guy bolted so fast, I'm surprised every wall in the Florida State House doesn't have a Rick Scott-shaped hole in it. But the governor didn't get too far before CNN managed to get him on the phone.
There are a lot of Americans watching right now who want to know what they can do to help. What can they do to help, sir?
I think the biggest thing is pray. Pray for the victims.
pray for their families, pray that this never happens again.
You heard the man. The biggest, most helpful thing you can do to ensure this never happens again is sit quietly in a room with your eyes closed, talking to nobody. Wait a minute. We pray after every mass shooting, and yet they keep happening. Maybe we're not praying right. Can we check the instruction manual? Thus, also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Oh, shit. We were supposed to do something while we prayed? To be fair, Rick Scott did sign a law restricting personal backyard shooting ranges in crowded residential neighborhoods, which is apparently something you have to tell Floridians not to do. But he spent most of his administration relaxing Florida's gun laws until they're looser than the twat of an elephant who just had triplets. I don't know if that's because Scott's head is essentially a semi-jacketed 209mm round point, and I don't care. Because as we were reminded yesterday, controlling lethal weapons through a patchwork of state laws is pretty useless as long as America still contains roads and Indiana. There is no shortage of troubled 20-somethings out there, and whether they're radicalized by ISIS or homophobia or white nationalism or a dislike of movies, we are making it far too easy for their derangement to kill us. So until we as a nation find the political will to reject a mass shooting per day as the price of freedom, I'm just gonna pray. Are you there, God? It's me, Sam. Please, bless the victims and their friends and families in their time of unspeakable pain. Give us the courage to say no more. And while you're at it, please send the NRA a plague of boils. Amen.